Hey guys, welcome back. I took a little break last week because honestly I was fried from how much work I was doing, but I am back. So this video is going to be all about tips and tricks to help you if you are what is considered a baby or a new witch. So when you first come to the realization that you are a witch, or you have magical tendencies, or you're spiritual, or you just want to practice being a witch, it can seem a bit daunting. It's especially daunting and intimidating if you have no one to guide you. On top of that, there's so much information and misinformation on the internet and everywhere, so you don't really know what's true and what isn't. When I first started getting serious about my own witchy path, I wasn't really sure where to look and I was getting confused all the time. There was so much information out there, I didn't really know what was real and what wasn't, so it made finding the starting point incredibly confusing. I find that the main issue and what makes things so confusing is there is a big divide in the witchy community between what's real witchcraft and what's just what I like to call, and what many others will call, the witchy aesthetic. And let me be perfectly clear, there is a huge difference between the two. But we'll go into that a little bit later. Because I've been a practicing witch for almost a decade now, I feel like I'm in a place where I can help people who are just getting into their witchcraft and who are just coming onto their own path. Don't be fooled though, I'm by no means an expert. There are people out there who've been practicing for way longer than me and who know way more things. The path of a witch is a never-ending cycle of learning, relearning, deconstructing and recreating everything that you've learned so far. You will never stop learning when you're a witch. The whole point of this video is just to help anyone who's new to witchcraft and is looking for some tips and tricks and methods on how they can make learning a bit easier. I wish I had someone around or a video that I could have watched when I first started my witchcraft, and that's all I want to do in return is just give that back so anyone who's confused about witchcraft can find out a little bit about it and speed up their process slightly. So I've devised a little list of things I think baby witches and new witches should know when they're first starting their craft. So let's get straight into it. We need to talk about the difference between the witchy aesthetic and being an actual witch. In the age of social media, it's only natural for people to create online identities and brands. You have one, your friends have one, if you've got a dog, your dog has one. Everyone has an online identity that they push out to the masses. An important thing to note about these brands is there's nothing wrong with having an online brand. It's how you get yourself out there, it's how you attract people to you. However, when you're serious about being a practicing witch, it can be really frustrating when these brands pop up. There are lots of blogs, Instagram profiles, YouTubers, the whole lot, who all claim to be witches, but they're not actually. The witchy aesthetic can be easily identified though. Lots of people seem to use witch as a hashtag when they're trying to convey a certain type of fashion. It'll usually be gothic, cottagecore, anything like that. The term witch and witchy comes up a lot in these profiles, and it starts to get really annoying when you're trying to find out actual information. Even art accounts use the terms witch and witchy and other related hashtags to push their brand out there further. I'm going to throw my hands up here, I do this too. I'm a digital artist myself, and I find using terms like witch and witchy really helps to bring in the right audience that I'm looking for on my profile. When you use these hashtags, it generates the right algorithm and it brings people onto your profile who you want to be engaging with your profile. Personally, I understand why non-witches do it and use these hashtags, but that doesn't make it any less frustrating when you're trying to learn and you're new to the path. It has to be noted though, the people who use the witchy aesthetic and use these witchy hashtags, they're not inherently bad people. It's more they just don't understand the weight of the word when they're using it and what it means to actual witches. It's like, a really extreme example, but the best one I can think of is you wouldn't use the term like hashtag Catholic aesthetic on any of your posts. It'd be ridiculous. I'm not trying to start shit with saying this either. I'm not trying to be snooty, I'm not trying to be up myself, I'm not trying to say if you're not a witch you can't use this hashtag, you can't use this on your profile, on your brand, no. I more just want to bring awareness to the fact that there is a difference between being a witch and just having the witchy aesthetic. So now we've got that out of the way, I don't really want to go into it any further because there's a whole subject matter of its own. If you're a baby or a new witch, just keep this in mind when you're looking on social media, especially for any information about being a witch. You're going to get information muddled. Like, I've been practicing for almost 10 years and I still sometimes catch myself out by reading something and I'm realizing it's just part of the whole witchy aesthetic movement. It's okay, this happens, and it will continue to happen, but as you get more into the path and you start to develop your path, your own personal path better, you'll be able to differentiate it with no problems. What most people don't realise when they start out on the witchy path is you're going to be spending more time researching than you are actually performing magic. Lots of people, when they first get into being a witch, think it's going to be all doing rituals and casting spells and working with the moon and yada yada yada, whatever it is. But honestly, the best thing you can do when you start and continue this through your entire path is to research. One of the first things I did when I first got into the path and I was getting more serious about it was I bought tarot cards. Bear in mind, I didn't have any training with tarot cards. I just knew about what I'd heard on the TV. I'd had 1 or 2 readings done before that. But overall, I didn't know what the hell I was doing. If I had researched it first, I would have been able to get into the tarot cards and I would have been able to understand it properly. The first deck of tarot cards that I got, I didn't connect with at all. I used them once and then sort of just put them down because I wasn't vibing with them at all. After I did research, however, I bought another deck. Really worked well with them. A few years later, I ended up buying my second deck, which is now, to this day, my favourite tarot deck. It's called the Raven Prophecy Tarot deck, if anyone's wondering. And, ravens are very, very sacred to me. They always have been, they always will be. And I found this deck by complete chance as well, so it came at the right time. And then recently I bought another deck and I really resonate with that too. But this was only after I did research and gained a bit more experience. When you first start out on your path, whatever way you're going with it, you're going to be completely new to it. There's going to be things about it you didn't even consider. There's going to be parts about it that you had no idea were even a thing. But that's all part of the research. I've been celebrating Sabbats for quite a few years now, but even still to this day, I always spend like a week or two, sometimes like a whole month before, planning around and researching what I'm going to do for that Sabbat. Research is going to become your new best friend if you're not big on it in the first place. It's such an important part of witchcraft. I cannot stress this enough. It should be noted, research is an important part in anything you do, any interest, any hobby, any practice that you're going to do. You need to research it first. It's incredibly dangerous to do any magical spells or any rituals if you have no idea what the hell you're doing. And it's not just dangerous for yourself, it's dangerous for the people around you, for the environment around you. Say you wanted to get into spirit work, for example. I personally don't really work with spirits per se, but if you were to get really into that sort of occult magic and you knew nothing about it, you are just asking for nasty shit to be invited into your home, to be invited into your energy sphere, to be invited into your friend's energy sphere. If you don't do the research, you're going to have a bad time. It might seem boring to do the research, but it's so important. It's such a big part of it. The more insight and knowledge you have on your given subject and certain branches of your path, the better time you're going to have with it. So, research, research, research. It's your new best friend. If you're a baby witch or a new witch, just know it's going to be a consistent part of your practice. This point is one of those ones I wish I understood and knew way sooner than I did. This goes back into the witchy aesthetic thing. Because being a witch is sort of a bit of a trend and a bit of a fad at the moment, everything has gone up in price. That goes from the tools you use, to the grimoires you buy, to the clothes that you buy. Everything's just stupidly expensive when you're trying to practice witchcraft, because we live in a capitalistic society and that's how capitalism works. It capitalizes on these trends. However, that doesn't mean that you can't get things for hardly any money. If you work with herbs, or you're planning on working with herbs, then you can grow them yourself. And they don't cost much money to grow either. Depending on where you live, a lot of the herbs that you're going to use, you can forage them. Granted, you should do a little bit of research before you just go out and get them. Make sure you know what the plant is or the herb is. Take someone who knows a bit more with you. But you can forage them once you get to know them, and you won't be spending any money at all. A general rule of thumb when you're foraging is, if in doubt, throw it out. And this is something I live by today. I'm not an expert forager by any means, but if I have any doubt about anything that I'm foraging, throw it out. It's not worth the hassle. At some point you're going to need to buy books. And if you can't really afford books, there are a few ways around this. There are thousands upon thousands of books in PDF form that you can find online, and some of them are free. You do have to look around for these a bit, and it might take up a bit of a chunk of time, but once you find them, you won't even need to spend money on them because they'll just be on the internet. If you live close to a library, or you're prone to go into the library, because I know there aren't many libraries around as much as there used to be, get a library card. Granted, lots of libraries don't have a big magic and occult section, but there will be some books that you can find in there. You can spend an entire day in the library just sitting there reading, looking through all of the different sections, and if you really like a book, you can end up buying it later. A try before you buy, so to speak. Also, I do have to mention this, but I do have to err on the side of caution with it. We have the internet, it's filled with information, everything that we need to know is usually on there. You just have to be careful, because again, you'll get mixed up between the witchy aesthetic and what's actually true. But do your research. As you get more into your path and into the specific branch that you're going on, you'll start to know what feels real and what doesn't. And don't be afraid to ask people as well. Like, even if you don't know anyone in real life, there are forums and different pages that you can talk to other witches on. Do not be afraid to ask. Most witches who are actually serious about their path are welcoming to baby and new witches. They want to help you get into the path. They want to help you with your research. They want to help you understand things. Don't be afraid to ask. Most witches, myself included, keep a grimoire and or a book of shadows. We'll get into that a little bit later. But a lot of people, when they first get one, are under the impression it needs to be this huge ass leather bound book that costs you like £50 to £60. Nah. Depending on where you live, go to Poundland, go to the dollar store, go to anywhere where you know notebooks are sold and they're not sold for very much. It could literally just be a tiny, tiny little notebook. It really doesn't matter. All that matters is what you're writing in there and what it means to you. If you really want to get a nice book at some point in the future, do that. But for now, just get one where you can make mistakes in the book and you can just write everything in careless handwriting and you can scribble things out and you can rearrange it. It doesn't matter. As long as you care about what you're writing and it makes sense to you and your practice, it's fine. Get a nice book later on down your path if you're sure this is the path you want to go down. If you can't really afford candles, because some candles are hella expensive, go and get tea lights. They're really, really cheap to buy. They come in a huge bag, and as long as you have your intent in the right place, they work. Personally, I like to use coloured candles because I do a lot of elemental work and a lot of elemental circles. So having the coloured candles really helps me to represent the elements. But again, you can use tea lights. You don't have to do it. This is just my personal way that I enjoy. So as you can probably see, here's one of the candles. It's being used quite a bit. This is my water candle, and I have different colours for every element. These particular candles I get from a shop called Tiger or Flying Tiger. I'm pretty sure that it originates in Copenhagen. I could be wrong though. It's definitely somewhere around that area in Europe. This shop is stupidly cheap in price for everything, and all the candles there cost about £2.50. I'm Welsh, if anyone's wondering, and we use the Great British Pound as our currency over here, so just convert that to whatever your region uses for money. So for 5 candles, which is what I need for a circle, I can get like 5 of them for just under or just over a tenner, £10. That's cheap. It really depends what you're doing and what you want the candles for, but you can just use tea lights. They don't have to be coloured candles. That's just something that I like to do. The main thing about witchcraft that most people don't seem to understand when they first start is it's all about intent. I don't know what I was expecting when I first started practicing, but as soon as I learned that all of your magic and everything you do in witchcraft is all about intent, it made it so much more fun to me. This is why it doesn't matter how much money you're spending. You could have like the cheapest stuff ever, and as long as your intent is in the right place, you can use it and it'll work exactly the same as something that cost you £100. The quality of the instrument you're using does not equate to its magical power. Remember that. It's also good for baby and new witches to get cheaper stuff because you might figure out somewhere down your path that the current path you're on isn't where you want to go. You might need other tools at some point that have nothing to do with what you're learning about now. Take some time to really spend time with whatever branch of the path you're on and see if it's what you're into. When you're positive it's what you're into, then you can spend a bit more money. It's the same for artists though. It's like we usually buy all the cheap pens and pencils first when we're first starting, and as we get more into it, we start spending the big bucks. So yeah, you don't have to spend a load of money to be a witch. Fuck the aesthetic right off. You don't need it. Just focus on your intent always. That's where the power is. These are two phrases and two things you're going to come across when you're practicing being a witch a lot. It should be noted though, before we even get into grimoires and books of shadows, not every witch keeps them. Another thing about grimoires and books of shadows, you're going to get hella confused on what each one is. I did for ages. I mean like years. I was like, eh. They're practically the same thing, but there are subtle differences. So a book of shadows is basically like a magical diary or a journal. It's where you write down all of your personal experiences with witchcraft. You can put your birth chart in there, your dreams and how you're interpreting them, spells that you've created or you work with, your rituals, anything that's personal to you. Books of shadows are extremely personal to each witch, and usually they're not really shared with anyone else unless you've given specific permission to the person who you want to share them with. Just think of a book of shadows as your magical diary. A grimoire, on the other hand, is pretty much exactly the same as a book of shadows, but it's not quite as personal. It's a journal where you keep all the relevant information of your craft, from correspondences to herbs, colours, crystals, plants and things that you're foraging, like what they look like, how to identify them, properties, rituals and spells. It's like a big encyclopedia of knowledge that is important to your craft. Your book of shadows is your magical diary, and your grimoire is your magical research book. You can keep one or the other, or you can keep both. Or you don't have to keep any of them at all. It's really up to you and how you want your craft to go. One important note I feel like I need to mention, I consider myself a bit of a tech fairy. I love technology and I like to incorporate technology into my magical path as much as possible. So an important thing to remember is you don't have to keep it as a physical book. If you've got a tablet, if you've got a phone, if you've got a computer, whatever, you can keep it on there. It makes it much easier to edit and it's portable in a much easier way. If you want to go old fashioned though, you can. Just do whatever suits you, whatever feels right to you. Whether you're a new or baby witch, it's important to know that you're going to come across a bit of gatekeeping. Not so much in your personal real life, but more on the internet. Specifically social media. And we're back to this. Lots of people on social media can be quite hostile to baby and new witches because they think that they're being a poser or they're being fake or they're not being real, whatever. You'll also find that there are some more traditional witches who have like grown up in a certain way around a certain type of magic that aren't very open to other forms of magic or more modern forms. It's not always traditional witches though. There's just some witches who are very by the book and they'll try and tell you to practice in a very specific way that they've been taught. This isn't the case with all witches, it's just you might come across some who are saying the way that you're practicing is wrong. Whereas you should definitely take any information from a more experienced witch who's been practicing for longer and who's just trying to give you advice. You should not allow them to tell you that you're practicing wrong. Don't confuse gatekeeping with actual advice. You know, like anything, witchcraft has general guidelines and there are certain things that, you know, you will do wrong on occasion, but overall, you cater your practice to the way that suits you. Like, if you don't want to work with candles, you don't have to. Not every witch works with crystals. If incense makes you feel a bit sick or queasy or gives you a headache, side note, I love incense, but if I use very specific ones, like dragon's blood, which I used to love, I feel ill as hell. I get the worst headaches off that stuff. So I use other ones to compensate for it. But you don't have to use it. You don't have to use any incense if it makes you feel ill. If you want to bring technology into your craft, which I'm heavily pushing because some people really turn their nose up when people want to bring technology into magic, and it's like, on a little bit of a tangent, technology literally is magic. It's like the closest thing to magic we have in a physical capacity. How can you deny magic and technology to work hand in hand with each other? There is no right or wrong way to be a witch. That's the end of the story, basically. Find a path that resonates with you and go for it, girl. Fucking go for it. Don't let anyone try and push you off that path either. If something doesn't align with you, fuck it off. It's not important to you. It should be noted though, when you're doing spells and rituals, you should know what you're doing. Do not jump into them blind. This is especially true if you're working with like deities or blood magic or spirits. Know your shit before you start fucking around with it. If you come across an older or more experienced witch who can give you actual sound advice about these things, then take it on board and really listen. You don't want to mess with things that you're slightly more ignorant about at this current moment in time, and you don't want to invite that shit into yours and your loved ones' lives. This one puts a lot of people off being a witch because there's a huge misconception. One of the reasons I didn't go fully into witchcraft a lot earlier than I actually did was because I was under the impression I had to be religious. I have a really weird relationship with religion. I grew up Christian. I was christened and everything. Yeah. Let's not talk about that now. And when I found out about witchcraft properly and I looked into it properly when I was about 18, I was put off it for another 2 years because I didn't like the concept of having to follow a religion. Most people think that in order to be a true witch, you have to be either pagan or Wiccan. Not true. Not true at all. Only follow these religions or path if you feel 100% drawn to them. If you feel no draw to them, they're not for you. Research them a little bit before you say I'm a pagan or I'm Wiccan, because you might feel a pull to them, but then you might read something about them or research them and suddenly it won't really be for you. So give yourself a chance to actually understand it. Lots of people, when they become a witch, actually use the first year of practicing as sort of like a trial run to see if they're actually into it, which I didn't necessarily do, but I do think that's a good rule of thumb or a good way to go about it. If you're interested in being a witch but you're sort of on the fence, trial run it for a year. Don't give yourself a label, just see how it goes. While you don't have to be Wiccan or pagan to be a witch, it is so important that both of these paths, these religions, these way of lives, these practices are 100% respected. Lots of practices within witchcraft come from paganism. They are Wiccan. There are a lot of things that come from the Druids. It's so important that even if you don't class yourself as a Wiccan, a pagan, or a Druid, or you don't follow any of these particular religions or paths, please respect them, because without them, modern witchcraft and the witchcraft we have probably wouldn't be what it is. But overall, you can be a witch without following a religion. Don't let anyone tell you any different either. If anyone tells you that you can't be a witch if you're not pagan or Wiccan, they're gatekeeping. End of. Before you even begin to truly be a witch, you really have to sit down with yourself and ask yourself, why? Why do I want to be a witch? If it's because you want to be able to levitate things with your mind, or you're a fan of Harry Potter, I have some really harsh but true news for you that you need to evaluate your reasonings. Witchcraft is a lifelong practice, and it's not all glitz and glamour and aesthetic-y of dressing up in flowy clothes and casting spells and doing magic. Lots of it is about understanding yourself, the universe, magic, the seasons, the animals, change. Some aspects of witchcraft you could study and not understand them for another 10 to 20 years. There's things that I've learned about witchcraft that I'm pretty sure I won't understand until I'm 40. And that's 15 years away at least. Or is it? I'm almost 28. Okay, it's less than 15 years, but let's just pretend. Lots of witchcraft is working with your shadow self. And working with your shadow self is something that happens across loads of different spiritual practices, really. Shadow work is absolutely essential within witchcraft, though, because it'll help you understand yourself better. It helps you understand the shadow aspects of yourself and traits and personality quirks that you might not really like. But you have to deal with them, and you have to work out how to adapt them to be more positive. You'll go through lots of emotions when you do shadow work. I've done shadow work a lot in the past where I've just ended up fucking crying my eyes out because it just got so deep. It's not always glamorous and it's not always a happy experience doing shadow work, but it is essential. When you're first starting out on your path as a baby or a new witch, don't worry about shadow work too much because it gets all a bit overwhelming when you're trying to work out what path you're even going down. But as you start to settle into your craft more, definitely look into shadow work and work out how you can implement it into your path. You can do rituals, you can write in your diary or journal about it. There are literally thousands of shadow work prompts that you can find on the internet by just typing that into Google. And some of the questions that I found are pretty like deep, and they're pretty good. They're decent to work with if you need a prompt and not really sure what to write about. Shadow work is extremely deep, and you will make mistakes along the way. You know, I'm almost 28. I'm still making mistakes with it now. I've been practicing witchcraft for almost 10 years, or pretty much 10 years, and I still fuck up. I very recently made a huge fuck up, and I'm learning a lot from it. I thought I'd learned those lessons, but clearly I didn't, and I'm understanding it in a different way. I'm reacting in a different way. So shadow work's incredibly important. If I hadn't have gotten into shadow work and allowed it into my energy sphere, this recent fuck up I would not have been able to handle at all. You just have to learn, and you have to really talk with and face the parts of you that are not necessarily great, that are not necessarily positive, that are considered dark, in order to become a better person. If you do want to start a bit of shadow work though, like straight off the bat, the main thing that you should do before you seriously start working on your path and going down it is ask yourself, why do I want to be a witch? Be as intuitive as you can with this as well. Just like whatever pops into your head first when you ask that, go with it. Understand it. Try and work out why that was your initial response. You'll know if it's the right path for you if you ask truthfully. And then if it is the right path for you, ask yourself again in like a couple of weeks and see how much different your answer is. You don't have to share it with anyone. It should be personal to you. It should be about why you want to be a witch, not why you think other people will want to be a witch or why you think they would want you to be a witch or whatever. It's all very personal. Shadow work is one of the most personal things that you can do. So just ask yourself that question to start off with. I think this is something that all witches struggle with, like myself included. I'm a little bit more accepting of it now, though I still stumble, but it used to be if I went more than a week without doing anything like magical or witchy, I would feel intense guilt. Like I start to question, like, am I even a real witch? Do I do witchy things? Do I practice? Am I just calling myself a witch? It's like an existential crisis you have when you haven't done much witchcraft and you're just like, what am I doing? And I'm pretty sure lots of witches will feel this. And this has a lot to do with the image that's put online. Everyone thinks that to be a witch, you're going to be practicing for every single moment of every day. You're going to not have any other hobbies. You're just going to be practicing, doing magic, doing rituals, reading up about stuff, researching. Nah, we all go through phases in our craft, just like the moon. It's cliche and really silly, but it's true. If we were constantly practicing, I mean like that was the only thing we were doing, we'd have no energy, man. Sometimes we don't practice because that particular time isn't right for us as people. Sometimes we've got other things going on, like we all live in a modern society. Most of us live in cities, most of us have jobs to go to, most of us have hobbies that we really enjoy. When you're a witch, you need to find a balance. Like, you're not going to be practicing all the time. You need to find a balance between work, hobbies, witchcraft. You'll just know when the right time to practice is, and you just have to go with it. If you're going through a phase where you haven't practiced in a few weeks, don't worry about it. Honestly, don't worry about it. It's just not the right time for you to be spending your energy on it right now. It doesn't make you any less of a witch. I need to tell myself this more. Like, at the time of recording this video, I haven't practiced properly in ages. I baked bread on Lammas like I said that I would, but overall, I didn't end up doing a ritual. I haven't done much magic in like a little while. But that's because right now is not the time. I'm focused so heavily on work at the moment and doing well in my job. That's where my energy needs to go. And that's fine. As soon as I get back into the flow of magic, it's going to be so sweet and so beautiful, and I can't wait. And I'm so thankful for this rest period, because it means when I do get back into my practice properly, it's going to be amazing. If you're new to the path and you find that you're not practicing very much, or you're going through a slump with it, just know this is your recharge period. Sometimes we just need to rest, and that's fine. It doesn't make you any less of a witch. Oh yes, we're coming back to intent now. I need this point to really be like put into your brain, and I need you to understand this before you understand anything else. Witchcraft is all about intent. To be a real witch, you need intent. You need to believe what you're doing, which is part of the intent, but if you go into a ritual or a spell or into a tarot reading and you don't believe what you're doing, or you have the wrong intent for it, it's going to be a shit time. If you truly believe in the magic and the practices that you're doing, you're going to get much better results out of it. It's sort of like manifesting. If your intent is true and you're clear and to the point, it usually works quite successfully for you. This is pretty much the same with magic. Trust in your intuition and keep your beliefs strong, and you'll have a good time with it. Witchcraft and magic is all about intent. This is why it doesn't matter what sort of tools you use. If your intent is there, then it's all going to go fine. So just trust in yourself, trust in your intuition, trust in your intent. When I first started practicing being a witch, I didn't realise how many different paths there were. Like, when I first got into it, I thought, you're a witch, you do spells, you do rituals, you work with candles and crystals and blah blah blah, things you think when you just started practicing. When I did find out about different types of witch, for the longest time I considered myself to be both a cosmic witch and a green witch. But it's only in the last year that I've truly felt that I'm actually a hedge witch. It can take you literally years and years and years before you find out which witchcraft path is the right one for you, what name to call yourself, blah blah blah. Some witches don't even give themselves labels, they're just a witch, or some of them don't even use the word witch. It's up to you what you want to be called and what path you feel most comfortable on. Labels aren't important when you're a witch. Like, some people just prefer labels. Like, I've always given myself a label, like, regardless of whatever it is, be it magic, be it fashion, be it whatever. It's just something that helps my brain identify things better. Like, being able to categorize myself helps me understand myself better. But that's just the way my mind works. Just because I want to call myself a hedge witch and I feel completely comfortable doing that, that doesn't mean that you have to call yourself a sea witch or a water witch. To you, honestly, like, whatever feels comfortable to you. If you do want to give yourself a label to go with your craft, a lot of witches actually refer to themselves as like eclectic witches. Eclectic witches borrow a lot of aspects and practices of literally all different forms, from green witchcraft to kitchen witchcraft to cosmic witchcraft to hedge witchcraft. Like, they just borrow from all these different paths and they call themselves eclectic witches. The best way you can identify with which path feels right to you is to just test it. Like, try and follow a green witch's path for like a week, or like take some aspects of green witchcraft and see if they fit into your path. Do loads of research on these different paths, and if something doesn't resonate with you, fob it off. It's not important. Like, keep looking around to see what works for you. And remember, labels aren't important. You don't have to use them if you don't want to. There are so many different types of witches. Some who label themselves, some who don't, some who don't even refer to themselves as a witch in any way, shape or form. It really doesn't matter. As long as you're practicing and you're comfortable and you're happy with what you're doing, that's literally all that matters. So yeah, this video is definitely going to be a bit longer than some of my other videos, but that's because I really want to like make sure baby witches have some form of a starting point. These are just some tips that I want to share with those new and baby witches, because I wish to God someone had told me this stuff when I first started practicing. Lots of witchcraft, especially if you don't have a guide or a mentor, is going to be trial and error, unfortunately, but that's how most things go when you're new to them. But that's the thing with witchcraft, regardless of if you've been a witch for 2 weeks, 2 years, 2 decades, you're always going to be learning stuff. You're going to be making mistakes. You're going to be taking something that you learned 3 months ago and suddenly it's going to make way more sense now. Just trust in the process. Trust your intuition. Keep going. Don't ever be afraid to ask for help. I know the witchy aesthetic thing and the talk of like gatekeeping witches can put you off, but anyone who's really passionate about their witchcraft and their magic and wants to see more people within the community will help people who are newer on their path. Like, most of us love to help people out. It's just depends what energy you bring into it. Like, if you come in with the whole like, oh yeah, that's totally witchy, I'm so witchy, or you know, this is a fad, it's gonna make us a little bit more standoffish. Just don't try so hard. Just as long as you're passionate and you know it feels like you really want to learn, people are gonna want to help you. It sucks when you're new to the path and you have no one. Like when I first started my path, down my path, I had no one. Like there was no one around. I come from a family of Christians, both Protestant and Catholic, and like although I was a little bit into like the new age spiritual movement, I didn't know any witches. So it was confusing as hell. But that's why I made this video, because I want people who want to start being a witch, who are serious about it, to be able to have some form of a starting point. I'm really passionate about this shit, man. Like, I want people to be able to be comfortable enough to be like, yeah, I want to start practicing. And I would love nothing more than to be one of the things that's helped them start that path. I wish I had that when I first started. So now that I'm a little bit more experienced and a bit more confident in what I do, I want to give this help to other people. So on that note, I think we're going to end the video because it's probably going to be pretty long by this point. But if you have any questions or you want to talk about anything or you need a little bit of help, please drop a message, DM me on like Instagram or message me on YouTube. Talk to me however you want. I will get back to you as quickly as I can, and I will answer any questions that you might have. I hope that this has helped you, and I hope that you're having a great time on your path. The beginning is such a magical, mysterious time, and it only gets better as you age more with it. And I don't mean ages in years, I mean in terms of your mind. So yeah, I hope that this has helped you, and I wish you all the luck in the world. Blessed be. I will catch you guys really soon in the next video. Bye!